Hey everybody, how are you doing? This is Brian Kramer. I'm here with my co-host Suzie McCarthy in New York, and she's feeling just a little bit off today, so I am very excited to have her here. Her 90% with it is everyone else's 120 or 50% with it. So very excited to have Suzie here with us, and she says she's feeling better, so that's good. So we are here talking today with one of my friends. Glad to call him a friend, and also somebody who has really been evangelizing what we can all call a lot of different things. We were just talking offline and how many different variations there are to the term collaborative economy. And you'll see in my book, I've actually, because it's more than just around the cloud. Thank you, Jeremiah. It's also about the human economy as well. So you may hear a little bit of interchangeable ways that we actually talk about it today, and maybe we can even talk about that a little bit today. But first, I want to introduce Jeremiah Owyang. He is, and actually, you know what, Jeremiah, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. And the first question that will be included in your introduction in where you came from and where you're at now.
Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on the book. And I like the human economy. I think that's a term that we can use, and it's right on the cover of your book as well.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. So in the past, I was working on the brand side at Hitachi. I worked at Cable and Wireless, and I've helped big corporations really try to figure out what to do with new technologies from the web to social media. And I was even a Forrester analyst covering social computing for a number of years, and a founding partner at Altimeter Group. I think you know Charlene and Brian and some other, and Susan and the folks there. And about a year and a half ago, I launched Crowd Companies, my current organization. And essentially, it's an innovation council for Fortune 1000 executives who want to figure out what role do their companies play in this collaborative or human economy. So that's where I am now.
Fantastic. And you have been doing quite the job. You guys you're basically an organization that brings in and talks about the not just where it's at, but where it's heading. And you're working with brands to host these conversations at the brands themselves, and then also around the world. Am I off on that, or is there a different variation of how you like to say that?
That's fantastic. In fact, last week we had our 10th event at Whole Foods headquarters in Austin, and we were focusing on the future of food and hospitality. For example, Marriott was present as well. In the age of Sprig, Spoon Rocket, Airbnb, like what role do these companies play when the crowd is starting to manifest their own peer-to-peer business models? And we've had other events at Autodesk headquarters and at Polycom in New York, so all over the place. And our business, we're not a consulting firm. We don't sell software. If you're familiar with socialmedia.org or Marketing Profs or WOMA or PRSA, I'm sure that rings some bells to you. Crowd Companies is for the collaborative economy, which you might call the sharing economy or maker movement. And essentially, we're trying to answer this question, Brian and Suzie, what role do corporations play when people get what they need from each other? It's a pretty danging question, right? So we see there's lots of business opportunities. And it's not too different than what you've been talking about in your book around the social media. In social media, we told brands and marketers, hey, you're not the only ones talking. You now have to let them talk. You have to join the discussion. There's no more audience. Everybody's a producer of content. And so those same principles are being translated now to the physical world. People are creating their own product. Go ahead. You want to jump in?
No, I was just going to ask you about the size of this. I mean, it's what you're talking about is here. I'm going to bring this up. So this is on page 17 of my book.
Oh, here I got a big one here.
And you may have an even better one. There you go.
Yeah.
This is describe that.
Sure. And if anybody wants to see it now or any time, just Google search collaborative economy honeycomb number 2, and then you'll find that all of these different industries are being impacted, if not disrupted. And you can see on here there's like goods, food, services, transportation, space, and then even learning is being disrupted, healthcare and utilities. I mean, it's happening in every single industry. And essentially what we're seeing, Brian and Suzie, is peer-to-peer commerce. where people are getting what they need from each other. For example, instead of going to hotels, people are going to each other's homes, Airbnb. Instead of using a taxi or buying a car from perhaps Ford, they're sharing cars or doing ride sharing. Instead of going to a bank, people are getting money from Lending Club. Instead of so diabetic patients are sharing their insulin and alerts and monitors with each other on Help Around. It just goes on and on and on, peer-to-peer commerce in all areas of society, and it is quite the fascinating topic to watch.
So what is it that, why is it taking off so much?
Sure, and I'd love for you to chime in as well. I think that you would have some insights. I see three big things, Bryan. There's societal trends, there's economic reasons, and then technology is making it easy. I'll just throw out a few, but I want to hear your thoughts too. You're an expert in this space. So societal ones, people want to be more sustainable, right? And millennials were born sharing online, so why wouldn't they share the physical world? Economic, most of these startups birthed in 2008. Remember that? That was the bust. And then the third one is, I think these devices, mobile devices, make it so easy for people to share. But what would you add to that?
You know, I think that that you're right. I do think that there's societal. That's probably one I identify with the most. Probably that one in mobile. For me, it's just ease of use. I don't have time. And anything that saves me time is what I'll do. So here's a good example. This weekend, I ordered a Zeal massage to our house.
Oh right, yeah.
And we ordered it because we had a 2-hour window in between kids' activities and going over to a friend's house for barbecue. So we had 2 hours in between, and on demand we really needed a massage because I was working really hard on my book last week and I just needed to chill a little bit. So within on demand, we got this massage and it was awesome. Now that's a service. So how do you define service versus, you know, I guess on-demand service is like an Uber, where Airbnb is you're renting somebody's space.
Then there's goods. People are sharing cars. Then there's money, which is almost intangible. I mean, people barely even touch physical money anymore. So all of those things are example of people are finding idle assets, and they're activating them through mobile devices to be tapped on demand or through other services. And really that's what it is. And by the way, on demand isn't a term that's a large enough umbrella for this space, because Airbnb is barely on demand, nor is Lending Club. It's like a 5-year loan. So the term collaborative economy or human economy is long enough for us to consider the umbrella of what this means. And sharing has its own problem too, because regulators are saying, you're not sharing, that's not sharing, that's renting. And so each of these terms has its struggles. Yes, and I'm glad you use Zeal. You look very relaxed.
I use Zeal. I love Zeal. My wife loves Zeal. So, but these are the apps. I mean, I have we've not been to a grocery store in
Instacart.
Probably about 6 months. I rarely go out to a restaurant unless we need the ambiance. We have the restaurants bring that to us. I don't have to go to Costco and overspend. I can have Costco come to me and spend just what I want.
With Google Shopping Express, right? And
yeah, and this isn't just New York. It used to be just for New Yorkers. If you live in New York, you have access to everything. And now you can live anywhere and have access to anything.
And do you live in the suburbs? I live in the suburbs, and I'm getting service. Yep, right.
Sure do.
Okay. And there's other new services. For example, I recently tried Lux. Have you heard of that?
No, tell me about it.
Luxe. So when you drive to, I live in the burbs, but I drive to the city, and there's not enough room to park, and parking's a hassle, and you don't know if you're going to get a spot, and you're running late to a meeting. So Lux is an app. You tell the Lux valet where you're going to be, and he comes and grabs your car anywhere in the downtown or Soma region. He gets in your car, and he's gone, and for 15 minutes. That's right. I paid somebody $15 to drive off with my car. Usually I get paid when I share my car on relay rides or get around. And now he drives off with it. And then later I say, I want my car to appear here within 15 minutes, and they bring it to me within 15 minutes, and I jump in and I'm gone. And they also offer, hey, we can get your car washed for $40, or if you want it to get filled up, it's a $9 service fee. We're happy to do that for you. So there's other services. They can eventually run packages, fill your car with your groceries. I can see where this is headed.
Wow. So since you've started a year ago, you said, I think you've
a year and a half.
Year and a half. When you started, did you think we would be where we're at now, or did you think we'd be farther?
So I am surprised by how much funding has been put into this space, and I've been tracking that on a sheet, on a Google sheet, and you can find that if you just search in my content. Just search for collaborative economy funding. I think you'll find that Google sheet I created. And essentially, there's, just to back up, in the last phase, social networks, they've been funded $6 billion over the last 10 years, like Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. This market, the collaborative economy, has been funded $16 billion. And just most of it's only come in the last 3 years. Uber, Airbnb, Lyft have absolutely taken the lion's share for sure. So it's not an equal curve, but still many of the startups are raking in 30 mil or more. So the amount of money being pushed into the space from the capitalists is very surprising. Now, there's also been, the corporations are not standing by idly and waiting to be disrupted. They're deploying as well, Brian. There's been 190 case examples that we know of big corporations that have participated. For example, Whole Foods, we were just at their headquarters last week, they partnered with Instacart to allow Instacart couriers to pack up your stuff and then bring it to your house within 1 hour. And so that means Whole Foods allowed them 3 things. They gave them the data to which products are in the store, the SKUs. 2, they gave them a dedicated space in the front of their retail place for that branded Instacart, so people can store it. And 3, they did co-marketing together. And I don't know, and Whole Foods said they don't remember a time where they've done co-marketing with another startup before. That's a really big deal. So that's a great example of a crowd and a company working together. So now you can understand our vision at crowd companies, what we're trying to accomplish.
So how do these companies make money? Because I don't pay them that much.
Oh, the startups? Okay. In most cases, it's a loss leader, so they're not making their full profit, and their VCs and their board of directors do not want them to make a profit. They want them to do market growth, and so they want to go as cheap as possible, so you disrupt the incumbents like taxis and hotels. So they haven't turned on their revenue engines. However, on average, they take 10 to 15% cut from every transaction. And these startups own typically 0 assets. They don't own the homes. They don't clean the homes. They don't own the cars. They don't clean or gas the cars. They don't have to touch the physical money in Lending Club. They've never probably met your masseuses from Zeal. They have like very low management overhead and capital expenditure. It's all done on an app. So they're taking 10 to 15% cut, and basically the biggest cost is IP, developers, and then legal and all that other stuff inside of corporate. That's how they make money.
So let's talk about quality. Quality of an Uber, quality of an Airbnb, quality of a masseuse, quality of everything that you receive, quality of the groceries. How do you maintain quality when you don't own the assets?
Oh, that's such a good question. And this comes back to the human economy. What folks are doing is they're rating and ranking and recommending each other. The crowd is filtering out the junk. So this garden, this human economy, collaborative economy, it's self-regulating, and it's taking out its own weeds by the rating system. It's not perfect, but that's how they manage that. And when it does fail, the startups also provide insurance, or they have a cleanup service, and they promise to do background checks, a first-level filtering, but I think it's probably not that great. So I think they're leaning a lot on the ratings and reviews.
So now let's move on to the politics, because a lot of these like Airbnb, even Uber, especially Uber, Lyft, they're going into cities where they're not wanted. In a lot of places, like Uber is not wanted in a lot of places.
Not wanted by who? We have to qualify. Okay. Is it the government or is it the lobbyists, taxi lobbyists? We have to clarify.
That's a good point.
Who? Right.
And even more so the taxi drivers.
Yes, I agree. They don't want Uber. Although a lot of Uber, taxi drivers convert to Uber if they can sell their medallion. If they're not medallion owners, they will convert. When you talk to your Uber drivers, you can find that out. So let's talk about it. There's fights all over society. I mean, France banned Uber, and there was certain Uber pop, by the way, not all over Uber. Black cars are still available, as I understand it. And drivers got beat up. They were physically assaulted. Cars were lit on fire in France. Airbnb has been deemed illegal in certain cities. But then in many other cities, these are all legal. And there is an absolute legal battle and policy battle. And most of these startups have very big lobbyist teams that are trying to convince and convert politicians. And what most of these startups they do is they launch into a city. They get as much adoption as they can, and then they're able to tell stories of how they've helped people's lives. Saving costs, veterans, mothers against drunk driving. New neighborhoods are getting an influx of visitors because of Airbnb, the sustainability messages, disability opportunities, all kinds of stories like that. And they bring that to the regulators and the government folks, and they say, hey, here's the good work that we're doing right before they get into the battle. So that's a very typical pattern that you see. Now, with that said, a few cities have legalized it, and take San Francisco, for example. Did you know that Airbnb hosts and Airbnb now pay 14% hotel tax?
Wow.
It's legal. So you can see what makes things legal. It's money, my friend. It's money.
So let's talk about that, the money and the points and the data, and you get big. Oh, by the way, you said human earlier, and on the show, I failed, and everyone's tweeting me saying, how could you forget? You're right. J.S. Gilbert actually reminded me. Every time you say human, you get this. So there you go. There's this, for whatever reason, it's become a competition. We're up to 10 humans said strategically in a show. I think maybe Jay Bear might be the leader. I can't remember. So anyway. One of the things I wanted to ask you is about how are eventually how's the data going to be used? Like in Uber, I wrote about this actually in the book, how they're partnered with American Express. So data is really kind of king here, looking across the board. How are you seeing data being used to enhance not only the experience, but the company and everything that's to come?
So let's start with a rhetorical, broad question. Who do you think has more data about cities, Uber or the cities themselves?
Right? The cities, or sorry, Uber for sure.
Yeah, Uber for sure. I mean, down to the traffic in real time, right? And so they can see the flow of where people are headed. And so that data is going to be key. Uber is going to launch, and they're already doing retail delivery and food delivery. They are investing in self-driving cars, which suggests that'll be a new service in the future. So this is really going to be about logistics. Done correctly, Uber could be a threat to Amazon. They can deliver things from retailers' local locations direct to people's homes faster than Amazon can, which is typically 3-day delivery from their large warehouse in Seattle, although they're trying to ship to local as fast as possible. So data is a big part of this. And also Airbnb isn't just a listing site. They have more data analysts and big data analysis and scientists than I'd guess than the average hotel does. They are really data-driven. There are hundreds of thousands of millions of listings out there, so they have to match the right one to the right people and have all types of data to predict how that's going to work out there. So these are data-driven tech companies in the heart of San Francisco. These are high-end, well-paid people. They're taking the best tech talent from Facebook, Google, Pinterest, and Apple and eBay, and they're building out this next-generation platforms. So Uber is not a taxi company. Whatever you do, don't call them a taxi company. This is a big data logistics company. They're a big data logistics company. They're shifting into lots of business models, not just taxis.
So before we got on, you brought up digital feudalism.
Digital feudalism, yes.
What is digital feudalism?
What is digital feudalism? Well, let's go back and talk about what feudalism is. And I don't think many of us were around in the 1600s and hundreds of years ago. But essentially it was a time when a king at the high level granted land to a lord. That lord built a manor in his big house. And then he was able to request, or voluntold people to become serfs. And many times when you are born a serf, you will die a serf. You can't get out of that cycle. Indentured servitude. And we're seeing this pattern repeat now where VCs, who are the new kings, are granting incredible resources to the entrepreneurs to build these platforms, and all the workers are now going to be working on that. And they're being classified as, the workers are being classified not as serfs, but as partners. They're called partners, and that means they don't have to provide them with benefits or 401k plan or a gas bundle or car maintenance. These individuals have to maintain these assets on their own. That's the benefit of these marketplaces. Now, this has created significant unrest politically, and it's being used as a political football in the United States. Last week, Hillary Clinton, or the week before, said she has concern over the rights of workers and what does the future of work look like in this new gig economy. She calls it the gig economy, yet another term. And of course, being on the Democrat side, she very much cares about the middle-class worker rights. Now, last week, in response to that, Jeb Bush on the right-hand side, he took an Uber ride and made media out of it in San Francisco. And typically, the right-hand side says, Uber is wonderful. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not going to characterize all conservatives. But they say, this is wonderful. They're smashing Big G. They're smashing unions. They're smashing regulated medallions. This is open and free market capitalism. So expect to see a significant battle from the political side about digital feudalism, from the left-hand side to the right-hand side about workers' rights, freedom, regulation. I mean, this is going to be a big thing over the next year and a half in the political scene.
Wow.
Fun,
wow.
huh?
So what would you say that because we just left the social era. Again, there's many names for it, so I'm just going to say the social era. Mm-hmm. And I know you're a big part of that. You started Social Community Manager Day, if I'm not mistaken.
I did. I think it was 5 years now in the running. So I created Community Manager Appreciation Day for all of the amazing CMs out there. They're amazing folks that are leading the charge to make companies more transparent. They have a lot of responsibility to balance their customers and the internal stakeholders who don't always agree. And so I wanted to create a day to appreciate their important job. Yes, and
so I'm sure they appreciate you for starting that, because it's a fun day. I know people stay up 24 hours just to have a lot of fun doing that.
They're maniacs about it. They're maniacs, and they have online programming and infographics, and they celebrate, and people bring them cupcakes, and they have parties, and it's great. Many of them actually don't know that I created it. That's the lore of the creator is gone, and that's cool. That's even.
That's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think we need to appreciate the managers.
Thank you so much.
But I wanted to ask you about the where that's at now. Where is social media? And even further, where do you think shareable moments or sharing the sharing economy, or whatever you want to call it, is now integrated into what you're talking about?
Yeah, they're all tied, but I do tend to look at things in 10-year trends. So in 1995, if you could create a website, you needed technical skills to do it, right? You'd have front-paged FTP and a server that you probably managed under your desk. 10 years later, Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook. Anybody could create media and share media, and that's the social media era. I feel that era is had its full run of growth. All three of the major startups went IPO. Adobe, Oracle, and Salesforce did the acquisitions of all the players. It's a mature market now. There's still growth. Don't get me wrong. There's still jobs. Don't get me wrong. But the era of fun, excitement, and innovation, that to me, it's over. So the next phase is to the physical world, which we call the collaborative economy. And if you were a successful social media professional, you have an important place in the collaborative economy. And that's a very important message I want to share with you. It means you can use those same strategies of peer-to-peer or human-to-human, you can do the sound now, in the new physical world as well. So I am a social media forester analyst, and I've transferred those same skills over to this next phase, and I can tell you it is such a copycat. I mean, you can see when the conversations like, do we join, do we build? Audience versus the people are creating their micro-entrepreneurs. You can see the exact same pattern. So I invite all the social media professionals to join the collaborative economy age.
And by the way, you have 7 humans, even though I've done the clapping for only 2. I just want to make sure you know where you're at. You're killing it. So here's my question. How do you create shareable moments, shareable experiences in the collaborative economy?
Well, you have to define to me what a shareable experience looks like.
Yeah. Let me do that. When think about it in terms of a Kodak moment, a moment where somebody puts a sign out and says, "Hey, look at this. It's probably a pretty cool shot, pretty cool picture. You're standing in front of Niagara Falls. You're in front of an awesome place, or it's just a moment in time where you just feel taken care of." you feel like the service came out and really helped you out in a moment when you really needed it.
Got it.
And these moments are all over the place, and yet I still see so many companies not taking advantage of helping them to share those moments, helping to create stories in those moments in the collaborative economy. Because if we're at home and we're ordering these things, then what's the shared experience?
Sure, I can answer that. Let me give a few examples. So people sharing homes, that's already a very unique experience. You're going to be a local in somebody's neighborhood, and you get to experience it through their eyes. So that's a shareable moment that these startups are doing. But big companies are participating too. For example, Comcast partnered with Airbnb on the new release of Game of Thrones, and they took a few of the fan homes and they redesigned it like a medieval throne room, and you could stay in a king's chamber, and so that was a very unique experience. Also, KLM, the Dutch airlines, they have a large grounded jet on a runway, and they turned it into an apartment, and it's now listed on Airbnb. It's a luxury.
No way.
Yeah, it's an awesome place. It looks like a place that you would see, like, you know, a billionaire with this pinky turned up drinking tea would be in. It's an amazing place. Then we've even seen, for example, Ford partnered with Lyft, and they created their own custom Ford Explorer called Ford Lyft Plus. And it's a beautiful black and white car, and it has special chargers in the back and nice quilted double stitch seats, and it's just a very nice plush experience, and Ford helped to partner with those Lyft drivers to provide that, so that Lyft and Ford experience was a shareable special moment. So there's 3 examples of how that's happened, and there's a ton more if you look at my database of what brands have been doing. So does that kind of fit into your framework? Cool.
Yeah, that does. It does. And that's where I see the physical and digital world sharing between each other. But
they're tied. They're tied.
Exactly. So let's talk now about the future. Let's talk about where this is heading. We had a couple of things that didn't quite turn out yet the way that I think we see them, like 3D printing.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, where are some things at that? There you go.
I think it's so cool. I really want it. I swear, I'm like serious envy here.
Okay, then I'll send you one, Susie. This is from Shapeways. Yeah. So 3D, I'll send you one, Bryan, too. So 3D printing it didn't really take off. It's not in everybody's home. There isn't a printer in everybody's home, and it hasn't fully exploded yet. I think there's still some time. But this actually is a unique play. This came from Shapeways. If you go to shapeways.com, it's 3D printing as a service. So they 3D printed out at their either their Amsterdam or their New York factories, and they'll print you out anything in. It could be plastic, it could be wood fibers, it could be out of metal, stainless steel. And so you don't need to own a 3D printer, because that's kind of the problem. So I took a 3D printing class at Tech Shop, and my God, there's like 20 steps that you had to do. It's just a lot of freaking work to 3D print something. It's not easy. It's not push print on your computer screen and then a shoe comes out. No way. There's a lot of steps, and then you got to configure it and turn the heating right, and it's just like it's like the setting up a dot matrix printer. It's like a lot of work. So that hasn't fully come to fruition. So we have to give that a few more years. I think that's very early on in the space. However, the maker movement in general is quite large. So there are hundreds of maker fairs all over the world. Have you been to a maker fair, Bryan?
I have not, and I really want to go.
Okay, we got to get you to go one. The biggest one is here in the Bay Area, so you have to go next spring. In fact, I would love to take you and show you around. May I do that? Okay,
Please.
I'd like to be your guide.
You, man.
Yep, done. And we'll have a lot of fun. Field trip.
Woo!
And Susie, there's a large maker community all around New York and in the different boroughs as well, and people are making their own goods. That's already a thriving community. So, does that answer some of your questions on?
Well, so where is it going? Where, not just 3D printing, but where do you see this all heading in the next few years? Actually, let me take a quick step back. One of the things I keep hearing you say is co-branding, where two brands are getting together and creating something together. I've heard you mention that a couple times. And actually, in the book, I think I may have quoted you on that, where a Marriott and like a Airbnb get together and they co-brand, where the Marriott licenses, or they license from Marriott and they have an Airbnb place. So you know that what you're walking into is a real branded experience, but you're still renting someone else's place, and now you feel a little bit more like you're getting that Marriott experience. What things like that? Are there other things that are coming that are really innovative, really disruptive that you're also seeing?
I mean, nothing's like crazy extraordinary out of the. I mean, we'll talk about what this looks like in 10 years. But first, let's just build off that use case. So I predict in the future, because a hotel cannot partner with Airbnb, there's no partnership opportunities. There's no way to list ads. You can't put your hotel properties on the Airbnb side. It doesn't fit with their brand ethos, which is local and unique. So my prediction is this: that a savvy, progressive hotel company will say, we're going to create our own version of Airbnb, and you can list the top guests and hosts can find those properties on their, let's say it's the W hotels or the Marriott or the Hyatt, I don't care whichever, and these companies will be in a partnership. And the way it would work is this: for that local host, you can partner with the big hotel chain. You get access to their bedding supplies and their cleaning services, and to their trusted loyalty guests, which are unlikely to have a crazy drug party.
Yep.
Now, for the guests, you can use your points and stay at a cool Manhattan loft but it's been W or Marriott certified, that level of quality. And then for these hotels, not only do they upsell their products into a new channel, they get at least 10% revenue cut from a transaction they're never going to get. And so let's take that. It's not new. It's called franchising. This is how most hotel brands are working, but now you franchise the crowd. Now let's roll that back to social media. We've seen this story before. 10 years ago, we saw the birth of the community platforms like Lithium and Jive and Intelligent and Pluck, and these were communities for corporations to host their own community. And at that time, that was considered absolutely outrageous thinking, right? What do you mean we're going to let customers talk and they're going to self-support each other, not call our customer care? What if they give each other wrong advice? Oh my God, legal concerns. Oh no, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And what if they talk about competitors? Right? So we've already been through that. 90% of companies have private branded communities. Expect to see 90% of companies to have their own marketplaces in the future where people buy and sell around them. So that's my big vision for how this space plays out over time.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, I'm gonna just ask you one more question. I'm gonna turn you over to the crowd.
Oh, please.
So, and that's where
be gentle.
You'll get Susie's time. They're great. You're getting a ton of questions. I'm watching.
Oh, I see Alan Berkson. I see Janet and Mike Bambrick and Courtney Smith. I'm seeing all these little tweets coming out, so I can't wait.
Well, you know Courtney Smith.
Yeah, I know who that is. You know her?
I kind of know her.
Well, vaguely. I've heard of her as well. I'm not, I've heard she's a little crazy at times.
And guys, keep your questions coming at H2HChat. If you're just watching this, hashtag H2HChat. Keep your questions coming on the stream, and Susie's going to pose them here in a second to Jeremiah. This is fascinating stuff, and I know we're not going to cover all of it in 1 hour. It's too much. It's $17 billion industry, and I may be off $1 billion, but a $17 billion industry.
16 billion funded.
There you go, $16 billion industry. I like to always add
the valuation. That's fine, but the valuation is going to be way more than that, right? And the transaction. So, yes, it's big. It's a big industry.
It is a very big industry, and it all has to do with people that are sharing and are collaborative between the digital and physical realm. My question to you is, how can the consumer prepare themselves for this? How can they get? Are they just merely going to adapt it by hearing from their friends? Because a lot of times I find myself. Even me, and I consider myself a fairly technical person, or very
you are.
And so, but I find myself hearing people say, "Oh, did you know you could do this?" or "Did you know you could do this?" And the marketing side of this isn't as strong. It feels like to me that we know that this is coming, that we know that this is happening. We don't have 10 Jeremiahs running around the world telling us this is what's going on. I mean, and maybe thank God. But how do you think this is going to get marketed? How do you think it's going to grow?
Yeah, and we did research last year. I worked with our partner Vision Critical, a customer intelligence platform, and we asked people, how did you learn about these services? And time after time after time again, it's word of mouth. both in person and social media. And so when you think about it, and we saw a direct correlation, if not causation, people that use social media were very likely to use the collaborative economy. I mean, think about it. If you're willing to share media and pictures of your body and your food, you're probably going to be willing to share your car and your home and clothes. So there's a direct correlation. And most millennials, the future, I mean, this is already native behavior to them. So they're open and they're trusting and they use these apps. It's not a problem.
Well, I'm going to leave it at that and let you now work with the amazing Suzie McCarthy. She's going to take over some of the awesome questions that are coming in, and I may jump in with a point or question here and there, but I will pass the baton over to Suzie. Go ahead.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. We have some just amazing questions. I have to say, you may be in the running to break the the H2H mentioned, but you have already broken our question. Hey, I got one! You've definitely already broken our question amount. This is just fantastic.
That's great.
So I will say we won't be getting to all of them, so I encourage you, if you get a chance, to check out the stream.
I'll be short on my answers as best as possible. Let's try to do as many as we can. Okay.
Love it. Okay, so let's go. So first one that I'm going to go ahead and do is say we have a great question right out of the gate from Nancy Rubin, one of our awesome community members, who says, regarding the recent development with Homejoy closing over issues with employees and contractors, do you see this becoming a bigger issue? So, you know, this is speaking to what you were saying with digital feudalism.
Yeah, yes and no, and I'm glad you brought that story up. When you look carefully and read the whole story, it appears that Homejoy was struggling to get funding over the last few rounds, and so it appears that the company might have been struggling. I don't know. That's what the comments say for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know the company. I can't really comment. But with that, when VCs see there's multiple lawsuits emerging, then they're going to say hands off. And typically, like what I mentioned with Bryan earlier, that most of these companies are running at a net negative per transaction because they have to focus on market growth. They need to get funding. Now, with that said, half of the company was acquired by Google. And Google's Google's preparing to move into the on-demand home services space.
Interesting.
So to me, this is consolidation. I think it's pretty normal.
Interesting. Yeah, I had seen that it was an issue of VC funding. So actually, a quick follow-up to that. So these startups, as they want to get VC funding, and as these lawsuits are in the news,
yes,
you were talking about storytelling, you know, inspiring their lobbyists, and you know, all these different things. How do you see them kind of changing the way they position themselves?
Yeah, and so storytelling is not enough. And essentially, these sharing startups, I'm putting that in quotes because I don't like sharing content, it's a crappy term. These sharing startups need to share with the people, period. That's the only way this model is going to work with the governments. And I want to praise Etsy. So before the IPO, about 2 months ago, they sold discounted pre-IPO shares to their creatives and said, you can buy part of the company at a lower rate before we go IPO, and you can profit from it. Now, not only do the creatives get that equity, but they get it before, and now they're going to be super loyal. They're part of the team. Right? They're working with their own customers, that partnership. And I think that's what's going to be critical in this space, is that these startups share. So a couple of things might happen. The governments might say, you need to turn these workers into W-2 workers. So both Zirtual, which is shared virtual assistants, they're already W-2 workers. But Instacart has turned their baggers, some of them, into W-2s already. These are full-time workers. And so that might happen more often. Now, there's a fight out there, and people that are pro this space think there should be a third class of workers. So instead of just full-time workers and part-time contractors, the middle one is missing, which has been called the dependent contractors. Instead of independent contractors, dependent contractors. And these might be freelancers that work for multiple groups out there, but they might be earning benefits from all of them together collectively, and healthcare from all of them, and maybe a 401k plan, or have some types of workers' right or comps. And that could form a union. There already is, by the way, a union called the Freelancers Union in New York. So you know about this. So that already exists, and they're very successful, and they have 401k for freelancers. So imagine if the government tells startups you must partner with that nonprofit freelancers union or provide your own similar one. That could be a play that could happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. I love that concept because I have to say, straight up coming from the millennial perspective, dealing with the economy, dealing with all these different things, you can very easily get screwed over, right? Just straight up. It can be very difficult. So as much as you love this concept, you also kind of come at it, from the worker side where you're going, okay, I want to participate, but how can we balance that? So
and this
I
is
love
going
that
to be
third way.
It's going to be important, Susie. In this political race, millennials are very active voters now, and many of them want to live in this freelancer economy, and they need to be taken care of. So Hillary knows that.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yep, totally. All right, so I want to ask a great question by our buddy J.S. Gilbert. He says he has a two-part question. So he says, what are the key essentials necessary for a product service company to launch a crowdfunding campaign, and then what are the fundamental mistakes that we see made in crowdfunding? So this is your how-to question, right?
Yeah, and I can't go too deep on that topic. Unfortunately, I'm not as honed in on that. There's actually crowdfunding consultants out there that you can hire that will give you those details. And there's two types of crowdfunding. There's equity-based and then there's perk-based. So first of all, you got to figure that out. Which one are you trying to do? Right. And there was a lot of confusion out there on the difference. So the perk-based ones mean that you get the product ahead of everybody else, or you get a special shout-out, or you can come to a cool party, or something like that. But the equity one means that you benefit from the revenue over that product as it creates more value. So you need to figure that out and be very clear with your customers on the difference. Now, I've seen some brands actually use crowdfunding as a pre-sales, saying, hey, we have another version of our product coming out. Do you want to crowdfund it? It's just pre-sales. I've seen some of those campaigns tank just horribly. And so really people are crowdfunding because they want to be in on the game to help create that product. So you need to understand this is about co-innovation with the crowd. Crowdfunding is a form of loyalty, really, right? Because you're going to be entrenched with that brand over the years. You're going to advocate it. So crowdfunding is like loyalty. Don't think of it just as a quick sales campaign. Right.
So kind of playing off that, I remember one thing that came up is, we had Veronica Mars did amazing example, right, of a crowdfunding campaign to bypass Hollywood and get a movie made.
Right.
We had then other companies, and I cannot remember the name, but some kind of bigger studios who said, okay, we're going to do this as well. And there was totally a backlash. Like, you don't need this, you're just trying to do X, Y, Z. When a corporation is doing that balance, is there a way for them to cleverly tell a story, that...
Yes. Yes,
what's your recommendation? I know you've written some stuff about this recently.
So I like what Honda did. It wasn't about crowdfunding new Honda cars. What they did is found something passionate for drivers. So all across America, drive-in theaters are shutting down. Now, and one of the main reasons is they don't have digital projectors, which most films are digital now. So they launched a crowdfunding with Indiegogo, and they said, hey, local communities, you can now crowdfund your local drive-in theater and see it come back to life. Presented by Honda.
Yeah,
and so
right?
It wasn't self-serving other than car culture.
Right.
And that was a win.
Right.
So that's a way
to wow, like I'm getting chills. I want to Google that now and find out if there was anything in my area at all, because that's just, love the drive-in, man.
See, and that's the reaction that you want to get, right?
Exactly.
People feel like, that's emotionally connected to me. I will invest because that's for my local community.
And then I'm thinking through Honda and saying, wow, they've done some actual listening. So I'm a social listening data geek, right? So I'm looking and saying, okay, they actually thoughtfully thought through who the community, is and did all that. As opposed to, I call it the shiny thing syndrome, right?
That's right.
Ooh, look,
exactly.
Kickstarter, we're just going to, throw this on there, and it's a new marketing tool. So that is very cool. I want to do some aspect of that. So, this is, I want to go ahead and jump into Renee Floyd's question, going a bit international. She says, what opportunities do you see for collaborative startups in developing countries with high percentages of mobile users? So I know India's had some interesting examples.
Yeah, lots of opportunity. So mobile is typically a prerequisite for this market, and density is often a prerequisite for this market. And but most of these startups have been focused on the first world, the Western world.
Yeah.
However, one of the top 10 funded startups has been Ola Car, which is OLA in India, which is their version of Uber.
Yes.
And so so we can already see that's going to start to happen. So these technologies can enable people in emerging markets to share the resources that they have very limited versions of. So maybe one community could buy something very expensive like a well, and they could all share it together, or they could be crowdfunding from or outside people that are funding it. So there's lots of opportunity for technology to help the emerging market. The bigger question that will come up, though, will be who actually owns this stuff? Like the startups that are funding this, some Western Silicon Valley VC, who really owns this stuff? So that will have to be answered over time.
Yep, absolutely. Pure Matter had the opportunity actually to work with the Tech Awards, in Silicon Valley, just the amazing things that occur there. And one thing that they do is bring these laureates over from different countries. And a lot of what they're doing at this point, it's not just creating a very cool device. There's a lot of really cool collaborative crowdsourcing types of campaigns that go through that. It's just fascinating to see what's coming up. So Brandon, and Brandon, I am not going to try to say your name because I have butchered it on past chats, so you're going to have to give me the phonetic spelling again.
It's Steadmans.
Hey, thank you. All right, Jeremiah said it. Perfect. So he may be seeing the question here. So he's referring to you and Brian both talking about, especially I think BK was talking about, how you're not going out to dinners, you're not going grocery shopping, all these different things. And so he's talking about the trade-off between convenience versus your personal experience. So I think that's both customer experience, but also just human experience, right? 'Cause this is a big difference.
Brian's a recluse now. He's a hermit. He's got all these services coming. There was an article.
See, that's what I've been thinking too. I just, I didn't want to.
There was a term that came up in this very clever article called the shut-in economy.
Yes,
where there's a picture of this millennial, and they never leave the couch because everything's brought to them.
Yeah.
And that is one aspect of that as a result of this. I'll be gentle on how I say it, but people may not want to go out, and right, they may just stay home. And with social media, I'm connected to my friends all the time. I don't need to see them. But I think people are still going out and about and visiting them. So that's a smaller percentage of people. So it means when Brian does want to go out, he can focus on the things that he really likes, like a conference, or to the park, or to the or to go to this local taqueria so he can have some fun. So I think that's the opportunity, is he can focus on what's important, and the things on the lower aspect of the Maslow's pyramid, remember that?
Yep.
Those are automated now, so Brian can focus on, self-actualization, on the peer community, yes.
Yep. So then kind of a thought that then comes to mind as I'm thinking about this is, do you think we'll be seeing the companies begin to really focus on their experiences, their in-store experiences?
They have to. They have to. And I was at the movie theaters yesterday, and they were demoing like these moving seats now, like when you sit in it.
Yes.
Right? It's called D-Box or something like that. That's a really horrible name, by the way.
Freak me out, I have to say, but it's amazing.
But so it's amazing, right? Because that is the response they need, because home theaters are so damn good now, and we get movies streaming on demand, pre-release in theaters right now, or streaming from a torrent illegally. Like, people can get that same experience in the theater, and the popcorn doesn't cost you $10. So they have to innovate now on those experiences. And so we're seeing that happen. But now the flip side of, if Brian sits at home all the time, he may crave that human connection. And he may actually want to go out and work in a co-working spot to connect to other folks. And I've met a lot of individual contractors, independent contractors. They say, I'm lonely, I'm bored, I want to be with other people. And so this is why we see that flip side. People come back out to work with other folks as well.
Yep. That's my story, actually. I lived in LA for a little bit, and I worked at Nextbase. Huge fan. Just best thing ever. And I still, when I work, I'm in coffee shops. I mean, I have an office that I do a few things from. It's my home office. But really, it's a coffee shop, because I need that background noise, even as I'm enabled by technology to do all those different things. I think that's really, really interesting. So Donna Peoples, also great shout out to Donna, always has awesome questions for us. She says, how does trust fit into relationships within the collaborative economy with community members, producers, etc.?
Trust is the biggest factor for this, and so we are trusting these apps to vet out workers. We're trusting that the ratings by other people are accurate, that these are gonna this is gonna be a nice home to stay at. We're using Facebook Connect to find out which Airbnb property has been stayed at by my friend Bryan, so I can make sure that it is a safe experience or a cool experience. So we're trusting in the data from social networks. We're trusting in the startups to do these things, and this is very important. Now, in the past, we've trusted the big logos from companies, like Visa. We trust them for their payment. Like Wells Fargo, we trust that the bank is going to keep our money. Like Hyatt, we're going to trust that it's going to be a clean, consistent experience without bed bugs, right? Yep. So we've trusted these big logos. That still exists, and now we are also trusting the ratings and reviews, and Airbnb and Lyft. Those are brands on themselves.
Yeah.
So it's happening again. And this couldn't have happened without social media first birthing. So this is a relationship of this happening before. Ratings and reviews have been around for a long time. Now it's just applied to everything in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So so let's throw, get elephant in the room, Uber. Right? Uber's had perhaps, some of the biggest issues, I would say, at least publicized issues with dealing with trust. Because, I wrote it down, the whole data logistics company, right? But people perceive them as being some sort of service company. So now we have the $1 vetting fee and all of that. Right. Uber's response is very much to say, oh, that's not what we do. They seem to be able to get away with it. They're the big company. But, what do we see? I feel like there must be kind of an adjustment into the middle, right, to try and bring customers along. What are your thoughts?
Are you talking about people may not trust Uber?
Yeah, that kind of idea. So in the sharing economy, for example, you say the medium is the app, right? It's not, and it's low cost because I don't need to do customer service. I don't need to do anything. Basically, I'm serving as kind of a matchmaker,
facilitator, right?
Facilitator,
Facilitator platform.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. So they're turning it over to the crowd, and you can see how the language of these startups changed. At first, like, we are your private driver, right? We are your private driver, and now it's like, nope, we are a transportation network company. We're an online marketplace, just like eBay is just an online marketplace, just like Facebook is an online marketplace. They're not responsible for the content. We're not responsible, right? So their language changed when the regulators started to come around from across all of these startups. I watched the change. It's pretty fascinating to watch.
Okay.
And I think this is only going to continue over time. However, let's look in the future. We're seeing startups in the space like Trady and Rep and Trust Cloud, which are trying to aggregate the reputations from all of these startups. Your reputation, Suzie, Bryan, your reputation, and try to aggregate that so you can take it around to the different services. That hasn't quite manifested, but people are trying to figure out how to make your reputation be portable. Mm-hmm. And that means, so if you're our 5-star guest at an Airbnb, then you're probably going to be a 5-star type of cool customer at a hotel. And so maybe you want to take that data and use it elsewhere. It hasn't happened, but that's what people are trying to do.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. So I have a question from Mark Hanna, whose handle is ML Hanna Fine Art, so very apropos. He says, you mentioned Maker. How do you see the collaborative economy working with artists and photographers?
What a wonderful opportunity. I mean, the artists in the media space, they have been affected, and they've been using, sometimes they've been disrupted by social media, right? When we saw the rise of like CrowdSpring and 99 Designs, many graphic artists were like, no, this is horrible. Or when Flickr emerged, everybody's now a digital photographer, right, expert. And so that whole thing has already happened. So to me, that's kind of like the last phase in the photography space. But for artists, there's many opportunities. So we're seeing that there are new shared marketplaces for art. And if you search out there like sharing economy for art, you'll find people have services where they can bring art into your home and transfer it in and out. So that might be an opportunity. Yeah. I think that's a general relationship, though. I don't have anything specific on that.
Yeah. Well, I think that gives them some things to get started on. And actually, pulling back and looking at this a bit bigger, Rohana Remen asks, regarding the sharing and collaborative economy, what's the best way to be part of this disruptive technology movement as an individual?
Yes, well, obviously you want to participate, so here's another way to think about this. When you're buying an asset, whether it's a car or a home or apartment, you might want to think about how could I share this and actually generate revenues from it when I'm not using it.
Mm.
So and there's been some amazing things. So Get Around and Relay Rides, some of their customers are cash flow positive on their vehicles. The car is actually paying them to manage it, and it's net positive.
Wow.
So imagine your assets actually generating you revenue, and that has been working for some folks.
So Jeremiah, just to jump in real quickly, on the flip side, how are you seeing traditional businesses, like you mentioned Whole Foods, how are you seeing them have a challenge trying to enter into this?
Yes.
You know, how are you getting their mindset to shift into this era?
Sure. So let's talk about Ford and BMW. Both of these companies make vehicles. They're $30,000 typically for ownership. You buy it, right? Well, the interesting thing is both of these companies are enabling their own customers to share the car after they bought it with people around them. So they partnered. So Ford has partnered with Get Around, and Get Around is peer-to-peer car sharing. So Bryan, if you have an extra Ford, a car that's not being used, you could rent it out to me. I live in your area, and you can make money off me using that. So Ford Credit, that's the business unit that led this, the financial group within Ford, partnered with Get Around, and the messaging was this: buy a new Ford car, list it on Get Around, generate revenues from it. Now, how does this benefit Ford? Well, one, they're on the movement. People are sharing things. They don't need to own it. They're ahead of it. So when you're thinking about buying a car and you already know you're going to share it, Ford's going to be at the top of the list. And two, if this car is driven more, it means you're going to need more maintenance, so it'll be brought back to dealer more often, so that's an opportunity for them. So Ford is leaning into this space and saying, let's enable sharing and profit from it. And so the big phrase that I like to use, and this is from BMW, who's one of our members, by the way, then they said this: in the future, instead of selling 1,000 cars, we can't do it anymore because cities are saturated with cars and millennials and urban folks don't want to own cars. So instead of selling 1,000 cars, in the future, we want to sell one car 1,000 times. That's their quote. And they launched the Drive Now program, which is cars on demand, and they're also doing peer-to-peer car sharing as well in other segments. So big companies are changing their business models, and both of those companies, by the way, are like nearly century-old companies. Those are the large, big companies out there. So I hope that helps, Bryan.
Yeah, a lot. We have just a couple more minutes. Suzie, do you have time just for one more question, and then I'll close out?
Yep, one last question, inspired by Jacob Hennenberg. Thanks, Jacob. So he wants to get back to what we call this. And I know before this you were telling us that this is something evolving. So he says, are we talking collaborative, sharing, human economy? He even, brings up the term P2P economy, right? Or H2H. Where do you see this is going?
Yes, and that's just a portion of the names. In fact, if you Google out there for all the names being listed, and Bryan just tweeted it out, by the way, there's consumer to consumer, there's circular economy, there's caring economy, freelance economy, gift economy, gig, green, I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on. And so here's my answer. And my answer is this: in the end, it doesn't freaking matter. It's just called the economy. Yep. It's going to be integrated. In fact, let's go back 10 years. How often today do we say user-generated content or Web 2.0, right? Or social networking? It's integrated, right? Hey, I'm gonna Facebook you, or hey, DM me. It's just like such a normal thing that we do. And that was 10 years ago. So foreign. Oh, the social media stuff is. What is it? What is it? And now it's in everything that we do. And so that same thing is going to happen again. We will not be able to tell the difference between this new on-demand collaborative human economy versus the traditional buying and selling. They're going to integrate just like social media did. So it's just going to be called the economy. Now, I realize that was a flip answer, but for right now, the term that I'm standing on is the collaborative economy. And while that is a mouthful, it is comprehensive of all of the things that are happening in this space.
Yeah. I like that. Well, thank you so much. I'll let Bryan wrap it up, but this has been fantastic. And as I said, if you want to stick around, check the hashtag.
Oh, I will.
We'll have more things for you.
Thank you. Great
All right,
facilitation. Thank you, Suzie.
Awesome. So, hey, one real quick, Jeremiah. We have a lot of brands on the tweet chat and people that are watching, and I know that they're going to want to dive in more into crowd companies. So, can you let them know what different levels they can participate in and how to get more out of what you're talking about?
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So Crowd Companies is for large companies only, and we are a membership-based council. And you do pay annual membership dues, and companies get 5 to 10 seats, and they can participate. And they get access to our events, to our research and education, and you can quickly meet startups. And we're really a community to enable people to connect peer-to-peer.
Awesome. Awesome. So definitely make sure that you go to crowdcompanies.com. You can always tweet at Jeremiah, and also Angus Nelson, good friend of ours as well, works with Jeremiah as well.
Yes, he does.
And I love that guy. So love both of you.
It's so
guys.
personable.
Yeah. Yeah. Love you guys, and I love what you're doing.
Thanks,
I really appreciate the way that you're transitioning and helping companies to see things a little bit differently and to grow. So that said, thanks again for being on here. I also want to make sure that I give a proper thank you to our sponsors. I really appreciate that, because we wouldn't be here if it weren't for them, and for sponsoring the Shareology series in H2HChat. My book is now on sale, so you can get that on Amazon. But to the sponsors, our partners, thank you to Newstar, MasterCard, Cisco, IBM, Little Bird, Hootsuite, Freshdesk, Speakeasy, Influitive, Mutual Mind, and Cox Communications. You guys all rock, and I really appreciate it. Also, next Monday, we have an awesome panel, and that panel is going to be on how CIOs work with marketers. And so I would definitely encourage you guys to attend that. It is sponsored by Newstar, our good friend Todd Wilms, and company. So please join us noon next Monday at Pacific Standard Time, and we will see you guys all soon. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, for taking part, and again to you, Jeremiah. I really appreciate it. Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.